just stopped and wondered, what stories would the walls of your own home tell if they could actually talk? Well, today we're diving into a story that does exactly that. We're going to look at a family's life, not through old photos or journals, but through the sounds and the silences that were soaked up by the very house they lived in. So let's listen in. And this is really the core idea, isn't it? The whole premise here is that a house is so much more than just wood, nails, and plaster. It's a silent witness. It's a permanent record keeper of all the whispered secrets, the loud arguments, and all those quiet little moments that really, truly make a family who they are. And boom, just like that, we're hooked. Our storyteller isn't a person. It's the house itself. I mean, what a fascinating way to tell a story. It gives us this all-knowing, always-present perspective on a family's entire history. So our story begins, and the house is basically inviting us to lean in and listen closely. It's telling us that the most important moments aren't the big, posed ones we put in photo albums. No, they're the quiet, everyday moments that it hears and absorbs day in and day out. In the very beginning, the soundtrack of the house was pretty simple. We're talking to early 1950s, and the place was just filled with the sounds of two little boys, Randy and Stan. The house soaked up everything. You know, the sudden bursts of laughter, the cries of frustration over a toy that just wouldn't cooperate, and that patient, looping voice of a mom explaining something for the 10th time. You can literally track the family's growth just through sound. A third brother, Scott, shows up and adds a whole new voice to the symphony. And then comes that classic sign of growing up, the voice crack. The house remembers Randy's voice changing first, then Stan's a year later. It's like a sonic landmark on the highway to adulthood. Okay, so the sunroom, that became the boys' shared bedroom, was basically the house's secret vault. This was the spot where, after the lights went out, the real conversations happened. It's where the boys' true feelings came out and where they really started to figure out the world. Man, this is such a huge moment. One night, a 17-year-old Randy just asks this question out of the blue. And it's heavy, you know? It's got all the weight of that moment when you first realize your parents are actual people with their own feelings, their own hopes, and yeah, maybe their own disappointments. And Stan's reply is just so perfect and mature. He doesn't brush it off. Instead, he grounds the whole thing in reality. He looks around at what they have, food on the table, a solid roof over their heads, and he recognizes that, you know what? That's pretty big. You can literally hear these two young men trying to piece together the giant puzzle of adult life. Well, the house tells us they're wrestling with the biggest questions of all. In the safety of that dark room, they could talk about things like purpose, success, and their own father's life, kind of using it as a roadmap of what to do and maybe what not to do. These were the moments where the real learning was happening. But hey, the house wasn't just learning from these quiet, secret talks. Oh no, it was also absorbing lessons from the arguments, from the moments of discipline, and from overhearing the private worries of the parents, Fred and Betty. I find this part so fascinating. The house saw these two completely different but somehow complementary parenting styles. You had Fred the dad, who was a steady, firm presence. His quiet disappointment was apparently way more effective than yelling ever could be. And then you had Betty, the mom, who was on the front lines every day, dealing with the small stuff with this emotional fire that could go from frustrated to forgiving in a flash. And here, we get to be a fly on the wall for the parents' own late-night chats. And they weren't debating philosophy. They were talking about real-life, everyday stress. Randy needing new shoes again, making the budget work, worrying about how the boys were doing in school. The house heard it all. And it paints this picture of two parents who were just so deeply invested, always trying to make it work. And here's the kicker. While the boys probably thought their parents just didn't get it, we've all been there, right? The house knew better. It knew the secret. Fred and Betty's real wisdom wasn't always in what they did, but sometimes in what they chose not to do. They knew when to step back and give their sons the space to figure things out on their own. Well, the symphony inside the house was bound to change again. As the 1960s rolled on, the conversations started to shift. The talk was all about the future now, about leaving home and starting brand new lives. Here's another one of those gut-punch moments of vulnerability. Randy's getting ready to move out, and he asks his dad this one simple question. It just shows, doesn't it? No matter how old you are, there's always a part of you that's looking for that validation from your parents, that little bit of reassurance that you're going to be okay. And Fred's answer is just, it's perfect. It's not a simple yes. It's so much wiser and more realistic. He's basically saying, look, is anyone ever really ready? No, but you'll figure it out. You always do. What an incredible vote of confidence. That's a core lesson that got absorbed right into the drywall. So this timeline shows you, visually, how the house just started getting quieter and quieter. One by one, the boys flew the coop. Stan joined the Air Force, Randy got his own apartment, and before you know it, all three were married. Finally, after more than 20 years, Fred and Betty moved out, and that whole era came to a close. But that quiet didn't last forever. The house is quick to point out that the family kept coming back. The symphony didn't end. It just changed keys. It added these brand new movements, filled with the sounds of the next generation, the laughter and cries of grandbabies. So after all that, what's the lasting impact of all this life, all this sound? Well, the story's big finish is all about the idea that these experiences, they don't just fade away. They actually become a part of the house itself. This is the #1 lesson the house learned over those 2 decades. A family isn't defined by the big-ticket items like weddings or graduations. It's forged in the daily, seemingly tiny moments that, when you add them all up, create the entire story of their lives together. Just think about what a home is really built from. It's not the grand gestures. It's the background noise of life, right? It's the good mornings, the how is school, the arguments over homework at the dinner table, and those quiet I love yous. According to the house, that's the real stuff. That's the mortar that holds a family and a home together. What a powerful idea! These sounds don't just get lost to time. They leave behind a permanent mark, a unique acoustic signature that resonates inside the walls. That's what transforms 4 walls and a roof into a place that is just overflowing with memories and meaning. And that really brings it all back to us, doesn't it? This whole story is an invitation to think about our own spaces. What conversations, what laughs, what quiet worries or joys are embedded in the walls around you right now? What is the acoustic signature of your life? We'll end on this absolutely beautiful and just perfect line from the story. It sums it all up. The house wasn't just a passive observer, it was a participant. In bearing witness to every single moment of this family's life, the walls didn't just remember, they loved. And really, that's what turns a house into a home.